The movie begins with a man named Grace waking up from a deep, long stasis. As soon as he opens his eyes, he finds a robotic arm hovering over his head, pulling stasis tubes right out of his mouth to wake him up. Still disoriented, Grace is absolutely terrified by the robot. He falls out of bed and desperately tries to crawl away, and I say crawl because his body is still incredibly weak from being asleep for so long. He struggles for a bit, moving left and right until his body finally wakes up and he manages to walk. Looking around, he realizes the place is pitch black, but when he looks out the window next to him, he discovers he is in space. Yes, my friend, Grace is in space, completely alone on a massive spaceship. Terrified and suffering from severe amnesia, he looks up and sees microscopes and tons of advanced equipment. The crazy part is, he perfectly remembers the names of all the equipment, but he has no idea why he knows them. His memory of who he is completely wiped. He starts searching for anyone else on board, only to find the dead bodies of the other crew members. Panicking, he runs frantically until he reaches the control room. There, he starts talking to the robotic system, which is connected to every part of the ship. He asks the robot, "Who else is alive here?" The robot replies, "No one. You are the last one." Horrified, Grace tries to send a communication signal back to Earth, but the robot drops a bombshell. It will take exactly 11 years just for one message to reach Earth. Grace is stunned. He can't even comprehend how far away from Earth he must be for a message to take that long. He checks the navigation map to see how he can fly the ship back home, and he discovers he is relatively close to a sun. But this isn't our sun. Grace is completely outside our solar system. Panicking, he steps away from the control panel, goes to a whiteboard in the room, and starts doing complex math. He doesn't even know how he remembers these formulas, but he calculates the speed, the fuel, the trajectory, and realizes that even if he pushed the ship to its absolute maximum speed, it would take him 113 years to return to Earth. He is completely paralyzed by the shock, and right at this moment, his memories finally start coming back. At first, the memories are just fragments about something called the Petrova line, a strange line that appeared between the sun and Venus. This line was literally eating the sun, dropping its temperature, and the entire world was terrified. Then, clearer memories surface. Grace remembers he used to be a middle school science teacher. His students had asked him about the Petrova line that everyone was talking about. He explained to them that it was a strange phenomenon, and when scientists photographed it, they found atom-like particles that were consuming the sun. He told them that over the next 30 years, Earth's temperature would gradually drop. The kids were terrified, asking if they were all going to die. Grace calmed them down, assuring them that top scientists were already working on a solution. The class ends, and Grace is left alone with his thoughts. Suddenly, a woman he has never seen before walks in. Her name is Eva. She approaches him and asks, "Are you the Grace who published a research paper on water a few years ago?" Grace says, "Yes, but I stopped working on that a long time ago." Eva tells him, "We need your help to understand the Petrova line and what it's made of." Grace, feeling unqualified, refuses and tries to walk away, but Eva stops him, and suddenly her heavily armed guards surround him from every direction. She tells him, "The sun is dying and we desperately need your help. You might look like just a school teacher, but you have a PhD in biology. You are qualified for this." Realizing the sheer scale of the crisis, Grace agrees. He gets in her car and they take him to a highly classified, top-secret facility. The moment he arrives, they put him in a hazmat suit and send him into a lab. Meanwhile, Eva and a massive group of world leaders from different countries are sitting behind a glass wall, eagerly waiting to see what Grace will discover. Grace looks at his workstation and finds a sample that had been extracted directly from the Petrova line. He begins examining it under the microscope and running experiments. Finally, he realizes that the Petrova line is made up of strange, microscopic black dots. These dots are living cells that are highly attracted to light. They originated from the sun, traveled to Venus, and are currently feeding on it. After digging deeper, Grace discovers that these cells are composed largely of water, which explains why they are able to consume the sun's energy. But why are they eating the sun? And why did they go to Venus? Nobody knows, but it is happening. After hearing this, Eva thanks Grace. She tells him that many scientists around the world are working on this, so he is free to go. But Grace refuses to leave. He insists on staying and working with them. Eva agrees and tells him to quickly analyze the cells and find a solution. Grace goes back to his lab. He is assigned a bodyguard named Carl, who, honestly, is an absolute sweetheart. Carl keeps Grace entertained and even helps him brainstorm. While thinking out loud, Grace tells Carl, I just don't get why these cells left the sun and went to Venus when Mercury is much closer. Carl casually replies, maybe Venus has the right kind of air for them? Grace pauses. It hits him. Maybe these cells breathe the carbon dioxide that makes up Venus's atmosphere. Grace and Carl rush to a supermarket, grab some supplies, and head back to the lab. They build a sealed miniature replica of Venus, pumping it with the exact same gases. Grace tells Carl, if the cells move toward our model, it means they definitely breathe carbon dioxide. So they turn on the model, and boom, the cells immediately swarm toward it. They celebrate, but now they need to retrieve the cells from inside the model. Since the cells are attracted to light, they turn off all the lights in the lab so they won't move. Grace reaches into the model to grab them and freezes. In just a few seconds, the cells had reproduced. What used to be 3 cells is now 4. He immediately calls Eva and tells her the disastrous news. Eva orders Carl to throw Grace in a car, rush to a military base, and put him on the fastest fighter jet available. Grace suits up, gets in the jet, and flies out to meet her. Naturally, the intense G-force makes Grace throw up and pass out. When he wakes up, he finds himself on an aircraft carrier floating in the middle of the ocean. Eva greets him, but tells him that before they talk, he has to present his findings to everyone. She takes him into a massive conference room filled with world leaders and top scientists. Grace is incredibly nervous, but Eva encourages him to speak. He tells the room, I don't know much, but the Petrova cells aren't going to Venus to eat it. They go there to reproduce because Venus's atmosphere is full of carbon dioxide, which they breathe. That's why there is a visible line between Venus and the sun. They travel back and forth, absorbing the sun's light and energy and going to Venus to breed. If they keep multiplying at this rate, the sun will die very soon, triggering an ice age that will wipe us all out. At that moment, Dr. Eva decides to reveal their master plan so Grace can help them execute it. She tells him, you are the only one who figured out how to make these cells reproduce. That's why we need you to breed 2 million kilograms of this cell for us. Grace is baffled. He tells them these cells hold a terrifying amount of energy. If we try to breed and store that much, a tiny mistake could cause an explosion that would wipe out entire states. Eva replies, exactly. That's why we are doing this on a ship in the middle of the ocean. We need these cells to use them as fuel. Grace asks, what could you possibly need that much fuel for? Eva explains that they discovered these cells have infected every single star in the galaxy, except for one. For some unknown reason, one specific star is completely immune to the Petrova cells. They plan to use the super fuel to power a massive, ultra-fast spaceship. It will travel 11 light years to this immune star. The crew's mission is to find out why this star isn't dying, and once they figure it out, they can use that knowledge to stop the cells and save Earth. Grace is completely overwhelmed by this massive revelation, but he has no choice. He gets to work, and right here, Grace's flashbacks end. We snap back to the present day on his spaceship. He finally remembers everything. He realizes he was chosen for this mission to save the entire world. The first thing he does is look at his dead crewmates. Even though he doesn't remember exactly how they died, he is heartbroken to be alone. He holds a moment of silence for them, then respectfully ejects their bodies into space. Grace sits in his captain's chair, waiting to arrive at the immune star Eva told him about, a star named Tau Ceti. Soon enough, the ship's alarm goes off. He has arrived. He stares out into space, looking for whatever makes this star special enough to resist the Petrova cells. Suddenly, he spots something incredible. It's not a creature, but a massive alien spaceship. It looks like it's made of solid stone and is at least 10 times bigger than Grace's ship. Terrified, Grace tries to fly away, but the giant ship perfectly mirrors his movements. He goes right, it goes right, he goes left, it goes left. Realizing he can't escape, he calms down and observes it. The alien ship suddenly launches a small capsule toward him. A message. Grace quickly puts on his spacesuit and goes outside for a spacewalk to retrieve it. It's incredibly difficult, but he manages to grab the capsule and bring it inside. He tries every complex method in the book to open it, but nothing works. Finally, he just twists it like a soda bottle, and it pops right open. Inside, he finds a strange 3D model. Grace deduces that the alien is trying to say it is lost and far from its home planet. Amazed, Grace builds a similar model to show that he too is incredibly far from his home planet, Earth. He puts it in the capsule and sends it back. Shortly after, strange cords shoot out from the alien ship, latching onto Grace's ship. They literally build a massive physical bridge connecting the two vessels. Grace understands they want him to come over. Gathering his courage, he puts on his spacesuit, opens his airlock, and steps into the tunnel. It's pitch black and looks like it's made entirely of rough stone. He reaches the alien's door and peeks inside. Suddenly, a stone-like hand pops out. Grace jumps back in shock, but he calms down when the hand gestures for him to go back to his ship and copy its movements. Grace returns and seals his door. He then watches the alien ship start to spin rapidly. Grace spins his ship as well, creating artificial gravity. He can now walk normally. Thrilled, he walks back through the tunnel. This time, the alien's door is open. Grace steps inside and freezes. Standing right in front of him is a small crab-like alien. Grace is terrified and about to run, but to calm him down, the crab alien starts hilariously mimicking him. If Grace moves, it moves. If Grace dances, it dances. Grace relaxes, laughs, and tries to communicate, but he can't understand a thing. However, the alien manages to gesture that Grace can take off his helmet because the tunnel has breathable oxygen. Grace takes it off, and it's true. And now, he goes back to his ship to process everything. It hits him. This alien is on the exact same mission. It came from its own planet to find a cure for the Petrova line. Grace goes back and manages to communicate enough to confirm his theory. The alien's home star is also being eaten, its people are dying, and they sent this ship just like Earth sent Grace. Grace is absolutely fascinated. He brings a clock and a measuring tape, and over the course of several days, they work tirelessly to create a shared language. Eventually, Grace programs his computer to translate the alien's language into spoken English. Finally, they can talk. Grace names the alien Rocky. They share their stories, and Grace learns that Rocky's crew also died during their journey. They team up and brainstorm how to solve the Petrova crisis. Days pass. One day, Rocky visits Grace's ship, rolling inside a giant sealed glass sphere. Grace asks what he's wearing. Rocky explains that his species breathes a highly pressurized, scorchingly hot atmosphere. If Grace stepped into it, he would literally melt. So, to hang out on Grace's ship safely, Rocky stays inside the sphere. They agree that Rocky will stay on Grace's ship until the mission is complete. They hatch a plan, collect astrophage, Petrova cells from Tau Ceti and analyze them. They fly the ship to the Petrova line surrounding the star, fire infrared beams to gather the cells, and successfully pull in a sample. Grace and Rocky analyze the sample in the lab. To their shock, the cells here aren't multiplying, they are actively dying. They realize that Tau Ceti is home to a microscopic predator, a fungus-like life form that eats the Petrova cells. If they can bring this predator back to their solar systems and breed it, it will wipe out the Petrova cells and save their planets. Overjoyed, they map out the trajectory to dive into Tau Ceti's atmosphere, collect a massive sample of the predator, and head home. Then Rocky asks a heavy question. So you will take the sample and go home, right? Grace looks down and says, no, I'll send it back on automated drones. I don't have enough fuel to make the trip back. I'm gonna die here. Rocky, who now considers Grace his absolute best friend, refuses to accept this. He says, no, you will not die. My ship is massive and we use astrophage for fuel just like you. I will give you enough fuel to get home. Yes, it will delay my own return, but at least you will live. Grace is overwhelmed with emotion. He practically hugs Rocky through the glass sphere, crying tears of joy. With the fuel sorted, they begin the mission. The plan is simple. Fly Grace's ship close to Tau Ceti's atmosphere, drop collection pods attached to chains, let them fill up with the predator microbes, and pull them back in. They execute the plan and the pods fill up perfectly. It's time for Grace to do a spacewalk and retrieve them. He suits up and heads outside, but it's a nightmare. The gravity is intensely strong and the ship is being pulled closer to the star. Grace struggles with all his might to pull the heavy pods up. Suddenly, the intense atmospheric drag starts tearing the ship apart. Debris flies off, hitting Grace hard and knocking him unconscious. He wakes up seconds later, grabs the pod, and frantically scrambles back inside the airlock. Now, he has to execute a high-speed maneuver to ride the edge of the atmosphere, shut off the engines, and let gravity slingshot them out. After a brutal struggle, they manage to break free, but the victory is short-lived. The maneuver damaged their highly pressurized fuel tank. It starts leaking, and the explosive thrust from the leak is pushing them straight back into the star. Grace desperately tries to manually detach the fuel tank, but the G-force is too violent. He gets slammed against the monitors, bleeds heavily, and passes out completely. Seeing this, Rocky realizes they are both about to die. Making the ultimate sacrifice, Rocky opens his protective glass sphere, exposing himself to an environment that is lethal to him. He physically detaches the fuel tank himself, saving the ship. He then drags Grace's unconscious body to the medical bay so the robot can save him. But the moment he does, Rocky is severely burned by the toxic atmosphere and collapses, seemingly dead. Sometime later, Grace wakes up in a hospital bed, fully healed by the medical robot. He immediately jumps up to look for Rocky. He follows scorch marks on the floor and finds Rocky back inside his sphere. Rocky is in horrific condition, barely alive, and slips into a deep coma right in front of him. Heartbroken, Grace refuses to give up. He sits by his side, constantly adjusting the heat to keep Rocky warm, trying everything to wake his best friend. During this agonizing wait, Grace tests the predator microbe they collected. It works perfectly. The moment it touches the Petrova cells, they die. They have successfully found the cure. Finally, after a long time, Grace wakes up to find Rocky conscious and recovering. Grace cries tears of joy, hugging his only friend. He shares the great news about the cure, and they spend the entire day celebrating their massive victory. Before parting ways to return to their respective planets, Grace visits Rocky's ship. The inside is breathtaking, like a massive cavernous structure made of transparent stone that looks like glass. After spending some time there, Grace heads back to his ship. And right here, Grace remembers the very last piece of his missing memories. He remembers his final days on the aircraft carrier. Eva had introduced him to the actual crew meant for this mission: a pilot, an engineer, and a scientist. Grace wasn't even supposed to go. Grace's job was simply to teach them how to handle the astrophage fuel. He showed them how the tiny cells stored massive amounts of light and how a tiny trigger could release it. He demonstrated a small burst inside a blast chamber, proving how terrifyingly powerful it was. Days passed. The crew bonded, working all day and celebrating at night. Grace had even grown close to Eva, and they were developing feelings for each other. Just 3 days before launch, Grace and Eva were standing on the deck at dawn, looking at the spaceship. Suddenly, a blinding, massive explosion detonated at the launch site. They rushed over and discovered the horrifying truth. The mission's lead scientist had made a millimeter of a mistake while mixing the fuel, causing a localized explosion that killed him instantly. Eva turned to Grace and said, "The scientist is dead. We cannot afford to delay this launch to train a replacement. Grace, you have to take his place." Grace was petrified. As I mentioned earlier, he was not a brave man. He outright refused. Eva looked at him coldly and said, "There is no other option. Besides, you have absolutely no one tying you to Earth, no family, no friends, not even a dog." Her harsh words hit him deeply. He realized how lonely his life truly was. He felt sorry for himself, but still, he walked back to her and said, "I won't do it. I'm a coward, I'm a failure, and I can't do this." Eva replied, "I'm sorry, Grace, but I don't accept your refusal." She signaled her guards. They moved in to restrain him, planning to put him in a coma until launch day so he couldn't run away. Grace panicked and ran for his life, but he was quickly captured, injected with a sedative, and knocked out. And that perfectly explains why Grace woke up with amnesia, panicking, and having no idea why he was on the ship. Back in the present, remembering all this makes Grace feel ashamed of his past cowardice, but he pushes it aside. He goes to Rocky to say his final goodbyes. It's an incredibly emotional farewell, as Rocky is truly the first real friend Grace has ever had. They separate, each commanding their own ship, and set coordinates for home. Grace carefully stores the cure samples inside the durable xenonite capsules Rocky gave him. He sets his course and goes into stasis. Because of Rocky's extra fuel, the trip back to Earth will only take 4 years instead of 113. Grace goes to sleep, but just a few days later, a blaring alarm wakes him up. He rushes to check the cargo and finds a total disaster. The predator microbe has mutated. It didn't just eat the Petrova cells, it ate right through Rocky's xenonite capsule. Grace quickly seals the remaining samples in a different, secure container, but then a horrifying realization hits him. The microbe eats xenonite. Rocky's entire ship is made of xenonite. That means the microbe from the contaminated fuel will eat through Rocky's ship, destroying it and suffocating him in space. Grace is paralyzed by the hardest decision of his life. He can keep flying home with the cure and save Earth, or he can send the cure on automated drones and turn his ship around to save his best friend, dooming himself to die in space. He makes the ultimate sacrifice. He loads the cure and all his research into mini probes and launches them toward Earth. Then he turns his ship around and burns his engines to chase after Rocky. Days later, he manages to catch up to Rocky's ship. He arrives right in the nick of time. Rocky's ship was failing and he was moments away from suffocating. Grace rescues him. With the remaining fuel, they set course for Rocky's home planet, Arid. We cut to 14 years later. The drone successfully reached Earth. The planet is currently trapped in a harsh ice age, But humanity survived. Ava receives the drones, overjoyed to find the cure, and a message from Grace detailing his incredible journey and sacrifice. As for Grace, we see him living on Rocky's planet, Erid. The Iridians built him a massive, custom-made biodome that perfectly simulates Earth's gravity, light, and atmosphere so he can live comfortably without a spacesuit. Rocky visits him constantly. During one of their walks, Rocky tells him, "Our scientists have finished repairing your ship. It's fully fueled. You can go back to Earth whenever you want." Grace smiles, walking side by side with his best friend, finally at peace, knowing he has a choice, and the movie ends with a complete victory for everyone. Peace.